As humanity navigates the complexities of the modern world in 2026, a peculiar situation arises in the realm of inner seeking. It is perfectly captured in the exploration of the paradox of the spiritual quest. What the masters would warn about today in 2026. 4 profound revelations. Nisargadatta Maharaj. A deep contradiction unfolds. The seeker has access to every digital archive of mystical wisdom ever compiled. Yet, in this vast ocean of enlightenment, the mind remains thirsty, jumping between concepts. Liberation is treated as just another data point to be consumed and categorized. The modern era presents an illusion of progress through accumulating spiritual information, mistaking the map for the territory itself. Through the lens of profound sages like Ramana Maharshi, this frantic accumulation of knowledge acts not as a bridge to the self, but as the very wall blocking the view. The paradox lies in the fact that the mind is trying to grasp that which is fundamentally beyond the mind. It operates like a dog chasing its own tail, fully convinced that running faster will secure the ultimate prize. Today, the spiritual quest has become heavily commodified. The seeker builds an identity out of being a seeker, decorating the ego with spiritual achievements and mystical vocabulary, but the true state of being requires no decoration. It requires the absolute stripping away of all these acquired identities, even the identity of the enlightened seeker. The great trap of the contemporary journey is the projection of liberation into a distant, idealized future. The mind creates a narrative that enlightenment will arrive after reading just one more book, or meditating for a few more years. This is the very mechanism of spiritual delay. True inquiry, the kind advocated by Ramana Maharshi, cuts through this temporal illusion completely. It demands attention to the immediate sense of existence, the undeniable feeling of being alive right in this exact moment, devoid of any past history or future anticipation. The paradox deepens, because the harder the seeker looks for it outside, the more elusive it becomes. The searching itself is the only thing obscuring the finding. In the digital age, the noise is deafening, filled with quick-fix hacks and algorithms designed to keep attention fragmented. The masters would undoubtedly warn against mistaking this conceptual noise for actual realization. They would point out that the silence required is not merely the absence of acoustic sound, but the stillness of the conceptualizing mind. Therefore, the first profound revelation centers on recognizing the futility of outward accumulation. The quest itself must be questioned. Who is the one seeking? This fundamental inquiry turns the attention away from the glittering objects of the spiritual supermarket and redirects it back to the source of awareness itself. It is a profound shift from acquiring to discarding, from becoming to simply being. The journey ends exactly where it began, recognizing there was never anyone who needed to travel at all. You are sitting there, surrounded by the dizzying noise of this modern world, constantly searching for a way out of the very trap you are building with your own mind. In this fast-paced reality of 2026, you have more spiritual information at your fingertips than any generation before you. Yet, you feel more lost, don't you? You scroll through endless feeds, consuming awakening like it is just another product on a digital shelf. But Ramana Maharshi would gently ask you to pause right now and see the absurdity of this pursuit. You are looking for the silence of your own being by accumulating more noise. You think that if you just find the right concept, the right master, or the perfect meditation technique, the veil will suddenly drop. But the seeking itself has become the ultimate distraction, keeping you away from what is already here. Notice how your mind tricks you into believing that enlightenment is an event waiting for you in the future. You treat spiritual realization as a milestone to be achieved, a project that requires constant upgrading of your consciousness. You download apps to measure your mindfulness and track your meditative states, turning the infinite into a measurable commodity. But the truth is, the self is not something you can acquire. It is what you already are when the desire to become something else completely subsides. By constantly striving for a future awakening, you are subtly rejecting the profound stillness that is already present in this very moment. You are running away from the only place where truth exists, which is the immediate, unadorned now. Before we continue with the video, I want to hear from you. Comment below with your name and the city you're watching from today. Tell me what situation or struggle you're currently going through in your life. And type this phrase in the comments: I'm beginning to see things more clearly. I read the comments and love seeing this community growing from so many different places. And if this message resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. When Ramana Maharshi spoke of self-inquiry, he did not mean for it to become another intellectual gymnastics routine for your exhausted brain. He simply asked you to trace the feeling of I back to its source. But look at what you do instead. You take the question, who am I? And you feed it to your intellect, hoping it will spit out a satisfying philosophical answer. You debate it in online forums, you write journals about your profound insights, and you build an entire identity around being a dedicated spiritual seeker. The ego loves this game. It survives by pretending to search for its own destruction. As long as you are seeking, the seeker remains alive and well, hiding behind the mask of spiritual evolution. You must realize that this relentless quest is actually a form of avoidance. You are afraid of the emptiness, of the absolute simplicity of simply being. So, you complicate it. You create stages of awakening, dimensions of consciousness, and esoteric vocabularies that only serve to entangle you further in the mind's web. If the masters were looking at your world today, they would point out that your spiritual materialism is far more dangerous than worldly materialism, because it disguises itself as liberation. You are wearing golden chains instead of iron ones, but you are still chained. You are attached to the idea of being a spiritual person, which is just another role played by the same old mind. Drop the burden of having to achieve anything spiritual. You do not need to read another book or watch another discourse to be what you fundamentally are. The screen you are looking at right now, the thoughts passing through your awareness, the sensation of breathing, all of it arises within the vast, undeniable presence that is your true nature. You cannot find it because you are it. It is the I that is looking. You trying to find the self is like an eye trying to see itself by searching everywhere in the room. Just stop. Rest in the quiet awareness that precedes all your spiritual efforts. In that total relaxation of the seeking mind, the paradox dissolves, and you are left with the undeniable reality of your own infinite being. I look around at this world today, in this year of 2026, and I see a profound exhaustion in the eyes of so many seekers. We are constantly searching, swiping, listening, and consuming. We have built an industry out of the spiritual quest, an endless buffet of techniques and digital awakenings. Yet, I must ask you right now, has all this accumulation brought you any closer to the peace that passes understanding? Or has it simply furnished your mind with more concepts? We fall into the trap of believing that if we just read one more book or decode one more teaching,
or most of your life, you believed you were your thoughts. You believed the mind had to be fixed, silenced, controlled. But no one ever told you this. The mind was never the problem. The real trap is believing you are it. There is something in you that watches fear, that watches pain, that watches every thought arise and disappear. That observer has never suffered. It was never born, and it will never die. When this is seen, effort disappears. The spiritual search ends, because the one who was searching was never real. This is not a teaching to believe in. It is a direct experience, simple and deeply liberating. The book, The Awakening of the Observer, does not teach techniques. It points to the exact place where the ego dissolves. Each page is a mirror, and what is seen there cannot be unseen. If something in you recognizes these words, the call has already begun. Click the link in the comments and get your copy of The Awakening of the Observer now.
the ultimate truth will finally crack open. But the mind loves the chase. It thrives on the idea of a future realization, always placing liberation just beyond the next layer of understanding. This is exactly the paradox we must confront. The great sage Ramana Maharshi always pointed us back to the simplest, yet most devastatingly direct question: who am I? He did not hand out complex metaphysical maps or demand that we memorize vast volumes of scripture. He knew that adding more knowledge to the mind only strengthens the mind's illusion of control. When we fill up our days with spiritual podcasts and endless debates about non-duality, we are still operating within the realm of the intellect. We are feeding the very ego we claim to want to dissolve. The ego simply changes its wardrobe. It takes off its worldly clothes and puts on spiritual robes, becoming the advanced seeker. But Ramana Maharshi would gently remind us that true realization is an unlearning, a profound emptying out, rather than a filling up. I want you to feel the weight of this right now. We are so busy trying to build a bridge to the divine, completely ignoring the fact that we are the very substance of the bridge and the destination. The masters would look at our modern obsession with progress and laugh with immense compassion. Progress implies time. It implies a journey from here to there. But how can you travel to a place you have never left? How can you become what you already are? In 2026, our culture is built upon the premise of upgrading and moving forward. We have mistakenly projected this technological mindset onto the spiritual heart. We think we need a spiritual upgrade. We think our current state of being is deficient and needs to be polished by years of relentless seeking. But what if I told you that this very seeking is the only thing obscuring the truth? The moment you stop grasping for the next spiritual high, the moment you drop the heavy backpack of accumulated spiritual knowledge, what remains? Just sit with that for a second. Without your spiritual resume, without the concepts of enlightenment or ignorance, who are you? This is the raw, vibrating silence that Ramana Maharshi invited us into. It is a space where the mind simply cannot enter. The mind will panic, of course. It will say that it needs to figure this out. Let it panic. You are not that panicking mind. You are the vast, unshakable awareness in which that mind appears and disappears. The paradox is that the harder we look for it, the more we overlook it, because it is the very looking itself. So, as we navigate this incredibly noisy era, the most revolutionary act is not to seek more, but to rest in the absolute simplicity of simply being. We do not need another method to add to our daily routine. We need the courage to stop, to radically halt the search and turn the attention back onto the one who is searching. When you trace the feeling of I back to its source, the entire illusion of the spiritual journey collapses into the glorious, ordinary reality of the present moment. You realize that you were always the screen upon which the movie of the spiritual quest was playing. You are the deep, eternal silence beneath the frantic noise of this world. You are the ultimate reality, entirely complete, lacking absolutely nothing right here and right now. It seems fascinating how the modern world treats the journey of awakening as just another project. The seeker today approaches liberation like a grand achievement, collecting digital courses and endless philosophies. Yet, this is precisely the profound paradox that masters of the past would point out if they were observing the landscape of the year 2026. The trap is the assumption that enlightenment is something to be acquired, a shiny object added to the spiritual resume. It is amusing to observe the mind attempting to consume the infinite. The intellect gathers concepts, stacking them higher, hoping the pile will reach the heavens. But truth remains untouched by this mental accumulation. Genuine realization requires the exact opposite. It demands an absolute relinquishing of every concept one holds dear, including the idea of being someone on a spiritual path. When one looks deeply into the teachings of Ramana Maharshi, the simplicity is startling compared to today's complex spiritual marketplace. The sage did not offer complicated formulas. The teaching was a direct pointing back to the source, to the awareness present before a single thought arises. The warning for the contemporary era would be about the danger of spiritual entertainment. People consume wisdom as a casual distraction, swiping through profound truths on screens, nodding in agreement, and searching for the next dose of inspiration. This endless consumption creates a thick veil of spiritualized ego. The individual feels highly evolved, speaking the language of non-duality flawlessly. yet the core sense of separation remains intact. The mind has simply changed its wardrobe, trading materialistic desires for spiritual ambitions, but the underlying restlessness burns exactly the same. This brings up the ultimate paradox of the spiritual quest. The more intensely one searches for truth, the more the seeker is reinforced as a real entity. The act of looking for liberation implies it is somewhere else, hidden in the future, waiting to be discovered. But the self is the only reality, fully complete in this exact moment. There is no distance between the seeker and the sought, except the imaginary distance created by the belief that something is missing. It is like a wave frantically searching for the ocean, reading books about water, and attending seminars on wetness. The wave is already nothing but the ocean. The warning today is that the abundance of information obscures this obvious fact. The individual gets caught in a loop of perpetual preparation, always getting ready to awaken, but never stopping to notice the silent presence that is already awake. If something in this video resonated with your heart, please consider subscribing to the channel and sharing this message with someone you care about. Sometimes one simple insight can change the direction of a person's life. And don't leave yet, because the next video on your end screen will take this topic even further and help you deepen your understanding of awareness and the observer. For those who truly want to explore this path more deeply, the book The Awakening of the Observer goes much further into these teachings and includes powerful daily practices. The link is in the pinned comment. And if this content has genuinely helped you, you can also support the channel through Buy Me a Coffee, and your support will mean a lot in helping me continue creating meaningful videos. You'll find both links in the pinned comment.